Back. Of course, it's the Daybreak Africa coming to you from the studios of KAFTAN Television. Today we'll be talking about the future of computer-assisted education in Nigeria. We'll be looking at the possible ways it can improve our education, what the cons and the pros are in the line of our education, and how things are supposed to be that are not so at the moment. And to do justice to this wonderful topic before this morning is a person of Spirit Phillips Omokanye, who is the CEO of Spent Digital Labs. A very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us once again.
Yeah, thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to have you in the studio.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, diving into the discourse of the day, we're talking about how we want to employ online learning into our physical learning. So how feasible do you see this?
Well, this is already in reality as we speak. We have people that are already doing that privately. And I think there are reports that there are schools that are already already implementing that, try to add video lessons, even though there's a physical class teacher, but there are internet videos which aids the teaching and learning process. So it is something that is possible, and it is something that is realistic, and it is something that will even make our education more advanced because of the advantage of knowledge reach in which the students, or let me say the pupils, are going to have advances of. So yeah, it is possible, it is realistic, except for the fact that implementing it on a massive scale, there are a lot of factors around it which we might need to look into.
All right. Talking about homeschooling and the digital space, how important they are. Firstly, I want to know, why do people go into homeschooling? That is one. Secondly, what is the importance that the digital space is going to have to that?
To be realistic, schooling right now is not the way schooling was before. I mean, these days, even if you are not smart, these kids are smarter than you. You would realize that a child of 8 years old, 10 years old is already on TikTok. I mean, on a normal day 20, 30 years ago, that kind of child is supposed to be in primary one. But these days we have 9 years old, 10 years already in secondary school. They're already on TikTok, they're already doing a lot of things. So it means if care is not taken, if we leave these kids to chances, that they should just continue with the conventional schooling, you realize that even though they are going to school, they are learning something else. Not from the school, but from peers. So what homeschooling does, it gives the parent the assurance of the true learning, because you have to be responsible for the training of your kid rather than trusting blindly that hopefully they are learning, whereas something else is already happening. So we can say homeschooling right now is more advantageous than the conventional school. When we talk about the behavioral activities, what they are exposed to, which you cannot control because you don't follow them to school, and there's a limit to what a teacher can do. So homeschooling is more advantageous, to be realistic. Now, if we say, how does internet facilitate? Obviously, you can't sit with them throughout the day. You cannot even know all the subjects to start with. You know, an average parent cannot know all the subjects that a kid. So obviously, you are going to need external resources to be able to train your kids. And fortunately, I mean, this is a world of internet. You can practically get any knowledge online. I mean, accurate knowledge for your kids. There are knowledge that has been broken down into series, syllabus, and processes in which your child can literally grow with. I mean, for example, there was this thing that happened during the COVID. I don't know if you heard about that. There was a child in Benin City. I think her name was Isosa, if I could get the correction correctly. This girl started homeschooling during COVID, and she started learning through WhatsApp. I mean, one of the comments this girl made was that the class feels so real, even more than the physical class. The girl used to complain whenever, the data finishes and there's no money to subscribe. He used to cry. According to the report, she said she would cry to go and meet her dad that please, you need to get me data because I must not miss class. Because she felt more comfortable learning from home. And you know, all what she described was like she had to listen to her teacher through maybe voice note or call, and then she needs to do her assignment, snap it, send it to the teacher, and then she felt like, so what else do I need to go to school for? So you realize that you can actually achieve the same results you achieve in conventional school with homeschooling if there is a proper place of the internet schooling process, which is very realistic on a minimal scale.
Okay.
Well, if I get you right, you're trying to compare the conventional schooling to the online schooling. Are you trying to say that the conventional schooling does not have much effect as the homeschooling does?
Yeah, well, to me, I practically don't see any difference except of the exposure. Aside from the fact that you are sitting with a lot of people, you know, you make friends, that kind of exposure, that's the only thing I can say such child is going to lose. And if you cross your if you dot your I's and cross your T's, you realize that such kind of thing can still be forgone on the alternative, because one of the major root cause of evil is still peer pressure on the long run. When your child meets with people they are not supposed to meet with, they start learning values that are not supposed to be inculcated into their mindset. And then before you know it, you know, I was with one of my, someone that looks like a dad to me earlier this year. I mean, the first day of this year, on the 1st, I went to greet some people, and then he had his kid singing a song, and then the father was complaining. He said, I don't know where these kids used to hear these songs from, and they learnt it by lyrics, so accurate. So now the question is, they don't play such songs in their house. Where exactly are they learning them from? And then the father doesn't like the kid singing such songs. So you see how powerful peer pressure teaches faster, even more than the school teaches. So if you do your scale of preference on the scale of 100, you realize that the advantages they get from the school and the disadvantage they will get through homeschooling is on a level of maybe 90-10 or 80-20. So you realize that you will be able to monitor, you'll be able to inculcate the value you want. Because when it comes to internet learning for kids, there's enough facilities to monitor what your kid is doing online. You can put your phone, or if you give them a tablet, you can put it on kids mode. It means there are certain things they cannot access. So there's a limit to what they can access. You can limit what they want to see online, and you can also monitor and track what they are seeing online. Compared to when you leave your kid to just go to school. I said there's a limit to what a teacher can do. Okay, a teacher can try to sit with them in class. What about in break time? Teacher doesn't know what is going on with them. And this is where most of these things starts from. So if you look at it on the long run, I'm not saying conventional school is bad. I'm not saying that. It is good. But if you look at it on a scale of preference, you realize that homeschooling with the help of internet learning is more better. That's what I'm trying to say.
All right. From what you've said, and if I have a peek, firstly, you said you are not condemning the conventional schools. That is well understood. But looking at the fact that you said, apart from the exposure, now if you're looking at exposure, it's a two-coin situation, the positive and negative, which you highlighted the negative of peer pressure leading them to something that is not right, what you didn't teach them. You also made an illustration of a child that is like, is a child to someone like the father figure to you, that was singing a song. Now, this song of the thing is a thing that you can possibly also pick on the internet. You also made mention of something to counter that you can put the tabs on kids mode.
Yeah.
Now, let's bring it to where I'm trying to understand the whole thing here.
Okay.
The homeschooling will help you monitor a lot of things, but is it going to give the whole kind of value you want? Especially, I've seen people that did homeschooling throughout their time because of changing of environment and the rest, but they lack something, being able to speak in public. being able to compose themselves when they are faced with crowd, and especially when you study courses that you need to defend projects, you need to do a lot of things.
Okay.
It's going to tell at the long run. So don't you think this is a big disadvantage on the homeschooling?
All right. If we talk about internet 10 years ago, that would have been accepted. But now I would say a no. Because if you want to do homeschooling currently, you can join a classroom. Everything we'll do physically is the same thing we do on the internet. The only difference is the physical things.
And that is going to tell on the psychology.
Yeah. Now this is where I'm going. The same way you have classmates, you can still do the same thing online.
But not physical.
Yeah. Now this is where the self-confidence comes in place. Now you are in a classroom of about 30 people, and then in a live class on the internet, the teacher is pointing to you to make a comment. Obviously, you need to talk. People need to listen to you. So the self-confidence automatically builds. Now, when it comes to maybe people facing a crowd now physically, even that problem is not solved by attending physical classrooms, because we still have people that go to schools and still cannot face a crowd. So you realize that is a personal or an individual problem.
But on a scale of 1 to 10, you know, our learning process and the way we learn are different.
Yeah.
But if you see the interaction from what I've gotten so far, interaction of people meeting physically, helping them to overcome situations like that. The physical class have an edge over the homeschooling. Don't you think so?
Yeah, I agree with you, because you can't compare a virtual life with a physical life. But where my point is going is that the benefit, the advantage compared to the better advantage we have is not on the same scale.
Okay.
You get it? Now, that's why I said I'm not condemning conventional school. That's why every parent needs to do their scale of preference before deciding which they want to choose. But if you put them on a scale, you realize that virtual learning through homeschooling with the help of virtual learning gives more profit. Now, coming back to the point we're discussing about self-confidence, like I said, internet has grown beyond the level of what we think it is. I mean, practically, I also run an academy, and I've been able to have an experience of what online class looks like. You know, I've trained over 100 people on the internet. So when I'm telling you what online learning is, I'm not just talking from research. I'm also talking from practical experience. You know, when I started, it was very difficult. I mean, even for me to inculcate value via internet, because there's a lot of factors, light, internet, you know, a lot of things. But on the long run, as technology begins to grow, you begin to realize how easier it becomes to achieve such results. Now, recently, it is easy now to train multiple people at the same time using internet facilities and having multiple people to attend the same class. I believe if you don't know anything else, you should know about Open Universities. One of my junior brothers is currently attending Open University, and anytime they are in classroom, he is always in class as though he's in a physical class, because he has close to about 50 or 60 people in his own particular class, and everybody needs to, you know, one of the rules of that class is that you must turn on your camera, you must turn on your microphone, you must not mute your camera, and you must not turn off your microphone. So it means you can't just join and then be doing anything else. So it means eyes is on everybody in the class. We see each other. You get it? The only difference is we can't touch each other, but we see each other, and then we know what everybody is doing. So if the teacher is talking, he can literally pinpoint who is not concentrating, which is maybe not really possible in a physical class. Some people always stay at the back, but this is a camera. Everybody is in the front. So even the issue of confidence starts to build up, because apart from the fact that you don't want to fail yourself before your lecturer, you also don't want to live low of yourself in the presence of other classmates. So obviously you want to present yourself as somebody who can actually face the crowd. So technically you solve such case or such issues. So on the long run, you realize what the only problem we're going to have with online classes is adaptation. A lot of people are still finding it difficult to adapt with learning with the internet. But when it begins to come in on a massive scale, for example, I pray it does not happen again, but peradventure it does. If we have another thing that looks like COVID and people have to be shut down at home again, there will be an uprising in internet learning.
So why should we have to wait to that time? Or can't it just come on a natural scale? And now when you said adaptation is a problem, I want you to really elaborate on that. And also when you said possibilities of maybe a COVID happening, why do we have to wait for something like that?
Yeah, that is what I'm saying. That comes to our exposure. Our exposure determines what we adapt to. For example, an average parent currently at this age, they would find it difficult to use Android phones or iPhones because of the complications. But when life naturally redesigns the way you think and the chances and opportunity you have, you won't have an option than to learn it. That is where adaptation comes into play. Now, because we still have the option of the conventional school, you know, some people can still say, well, I don't need to stress myself. Whereas that might be the best option for them, but because there is still an alternative option, they'll be like, well, I don't need to stress myself. Let me just put in for conventional. So when when people are pushed to the wall, I mean, the use of internet rose by 120-something% during the COVID. According to report, the server of Zoom crashed. They need to increase or expand their server by, I don't know how many additional percentage or in which they need to add to. Why? Because not because people don't know Zoom existed before, but because they had alternatives. People could meet physically. Why should they meet online? But when there was no resource to meet physically, everybody had to switch to the alternative, which became something that people, I mean, even after COVID, people don't even do physical meetings again. They'll be like, why should we meet when there is Zoom? You know, there was Zoom before, but that opened our eyes to the possibilities. That's why I said that adaptation is our main problem. Because if we should look at it, people should start adapting now to homeschooling. If you want to save your child from the corruption in the world, that is the only way. I'm telling you the truth.
It's beginning to sound like a pastor.
No. This is not a matter of pastor. This is what you and I know. Societal values now are being trashed to down. It has been, I mean, societal value is becoming something that is like a gold. You can hardly find a kid to maintain a societal value throughout his teenage. It's not a matter of pastor. You can hardly, it's something you and I see every day. Open your TikTok in the next 30 minutes. Everything you will keep seeing are complicated things. Hardly. It's not as if they don't exist, but we have the other side more populated. So automatically your kids are exposed to a lot of things you don't know. You will realize that they will be the one to show you things you don't even know. They will show you. These kids are smarter than you. So the best way to help them is to limit. I remember when I was still in secondary, my dad told me I can't use a phone until I write my work. Not in this generation again. Not in, you see, because if you try to hide, that rule cannot work again. That's where I'm going. If you try to say your kid will not use phone till 18 years old, you just kill that kid, because he's going to collect phones from his friend in school. And those things you are trying to, you know, those like you are preventing, at the end of the day, by the time you give them the phone, they will now teach you the advanced method of doing those things, because they've learnt it. That's the truth. Why not just give it to them? Do you get it? Why not just give it to them? Let them see it from the beginning. This is why you should not do this thing. You know, the reason why we have a lot of social vices in the community today is because there is no parent-children relationship again. When a child comes home abused, he cannot talk to his father. See, somebody abused me, they'll be like, go and sit down, you do this. Because the father himself is stressed, he doesn't have time to listen. So that kid is automatically abused two ways. So he doesn't have option than to just go back to where looks like a garden to him, which is actually hell.
Anyway, I think we're already debating, but we're talking about how we can bring this online schooling into our conventional schools for it to work hand in hand together to produce a better result. So how do you think it's going to play out? How is this going to be implemented?
Well, if you want to bring online school into conventional school, it might mean that you want to take jobs from some people, because we might not need multiple teachers.
Okay, that's like a disadvantage right now.
Yes,
Okay.
but not really a disadvantage anyways, because whatsoever you are bringing in is still a teacher, just remotely. So it means a teacher does not necessarily need to come to class every day or every time. They can just, I mean, a teacher repeats the same curriculum every year. It's the same thing the teacher taught last year, is going to teach this year, is going to teach next year.
Sure.
So you ease the teacher that burden of coming to class every day, repeating the same word every time. So what online learning does is that it enhances the capacity of the teacher. I mean, he has more time to do more research, to create more videos, and then it also gives the student ability to learn and relearn. You know, sometimes a student is not even in the class. Maybe there's some psychological trauma is coming from home with, and then the teacher is just blabbing, he cannot gain anything. The advantage of online resources is that you can go back and play back again. You can't find that in a real class, because once the teacher is done, he won't come back and go over that topic again. I mean, that's the end. So the advantage to a student is that instead of reading, you know, when the teacher just read and gives you notes, you just to read. Instead of reading and reading, why not just listen to the class again? Listen and listen and listen again. So you realize on the long run, it's facilitating learning rather than the conventional way of teaching, when the teacher have to speak once and then everybody needs to. So anybody who misses it once, that's the end. So real learning does not really take place in that process, because most times students just read to pass. They don't read to learn. But if there is opportunity of internet learning, which means playing videos or downloading PDFs, something they can read or listen to or watch over and over again, it gives that learning process as it should.
So if I get you correctly, you are saying there's the possibility of bringing the both together is almost zero.
Yeah.
It can't work.
I mean, if I try to get you, what I'm trying to say is that the possibility of bringing both
The
together,
conventional and the homeschooling together, that's the online learning, is zero.
you know, we are talking about three things here: home learning, online learning, and the conventional learning. There are three different things. Online learning can be done anywhere, can be done through homeschooling, can be done through the physical school, meaning the conventional school. So when we talk about homeschooling, we're talking about something different from the conventional school. Either ways can still employ the method of online learning. I mean, there was a particular school in Abuja then that we wanted to train, and then all we wanted to do is to set up a lab, put a screen there. From our studios, we can communicate the student directly, and then we plant cameras which will be able to see the student also from our side. So I can literally appear in front of the class through the screen and say, oh yeah, everybody stand up. I'm seeing the whole class. So that is the advantage of adding online learning with the conventional school. So if we talk about online learning, internet learning with the conventional school, it is possible. If we talk about the internet learning with the homeschooling also, it is possible. But homeschooling and the conventional school has always been in place, which on the long run, the conventional school takes over. And that is where I think we need to look into.
So looking into it and saying the fact that the online learning can actually be joined to the conventional learning to go hand in hand, what are some of the benefits that, will I say, the students will be getting from it?
Yeah, I highlighted some now. The advantage of playback. You know, learning is supposed to be inculcated, not to be crammed. But But what we do today in our education system, which you and I probably have done when we were in school, you know, most times when the teacher is even talking, you don't even get what he's saying until maybe if you are a genius enough to read yourself and understand, which averagely most of the students in the class don't do. So at the end of the day, you just realize, well, let me just give this one what they give. So you just have to cram it, pour it, but the real learning itself is not taking place. So one of the big advantage of online learning is because students will have access to the learning resources. So it means even if they miss the class initially, they can still go back and play the video again. Okay, this is what they taught us, and it will be as real as if the class is just starting. So that's one of the bigger advantage it gives to the students. I mean, the flexibility of learning at your own pace, which is more important in teaching and learning process.
All right.
Okay. Sorry, but if we tend to narrow it down to Nigeria, considering the state of our education system, the fact that we have issues implementing an effective, or rather efficient and working educational system here in Nigeria, how do you suppose that we'll be able to maintain this kind of learning if we might want to consider it?
You see, that was why I was more of like canvassing for homeschooling.
Okay.
Because the reality of this is that Nigeria cannot achieve this even in the next 8 years. I mean, I'm very, very harsh on my use of word now, cannot. Because it takes a lot of facility to put that in place on a massive scale. And if that reality is not possible, then we better talk on it happening in my house rather than open on when it's going to happen in the conventional schools. It takes a lot of cost to bring online learning into reality. It takes a whole lot of cost, and which one of the background costs which must be put in place is light and internet. See, these two things are like the major background thing. I'm not talking about the other things like, you know, computer systems, right, human resources, people that can operate, and then other things that needs to be. I mean, that's the two major things: light and internet. So you can happen to have the opportunity to be in a place where light is good. Is your internet also good? I mean, these are factors ordinary you cannot solve. You know, you get it now. You know, when the internet is bad in a location, you can't go and say, no, I want to buy my own internet, which is not possible. So these two things are things that we need to look at solving on a long run. I mean, do we have enough facility to give us good light and internet, which is a major problem in the Nigerian ecosystem currently? So you realize that on the long run, Nigeria cannot achieve that on a massive scale. But on a progress, we can say it is possible. So that is why I said if an individual or a group of people partner together, they can make it a private thing, which is more realistic, because getting it for somebody or a group of people is still more visible than getting it for people on a large scale. So talking about Nigeria as an ecosystem, the reality of this is going to take a whole lot of time and resources. But when we talk about individuals, it is actually visible, because averagely in every house, there's somebody that uses the internet regularly. So we can tap into that and divert that energy into the teaching and learning process.
Okay, I want to try to understand something. You said you have already knocked out Nigeria as the ecosystem of learning. Achieving that in the next 8 years is not possible. That's what you just said. Now, you said group of people or a family can pick it up and do something because it's going to come on a smaller scale compared to doing it for the larger people. But now, looking at it, I want to believe Nigeria as a nation is richer than an individual. So if Nigeria can solve it, especially you made mention of light and internet. If possibility is there for you to solve the issue of light, the internet will always be there, because it has to do with your location. So this is a big factor. So how do you think an individual or some little group of people will be able to solve this? Then secondly, most people, when you talk about internet schooling and the rest, they think about the costs. That's fund is going to be a problem. So outside fund, what are the other things that have stopped this thing from growing in a nation like Nigeria so far? And thirdly, do you think our government at this point are ready, with the kind of economic situation that we are facing, are ready to bring this into our educational curriculum?
If I should judge on the one side, I would say it seems they are ready, but they might not be really ready for what is coming.
It seems.
Yeah, they look prepared, but not ready. Yeah, judging from the fact that we're about to train 3 million youths with the use of digital skills, and there are also other programs that also train people through the use of internet, you realize that the interest of the present government is actually in that side. But the reality of the implementation. Now, let me answer your first question of how an individual can solve what a government cannot solve. You know, the other time I was talking about adaptation. Adaptation comes through exposure. People who are not exposed cannot implement. People who are not exposed will not even buy the idea, not to talk of taking steps to be able to implement it. It is people who are exposed that can actually think of implementing such. Now, someone who is exposed, who knows the advantage of the facility of internet learning to homeschooling, already has an idea of what it costs to run, compared to somebody who is not even exposed, who does not even understand the benefit, not to talk of thinking of maybe what the cost can look like. Now, someone who is exposed, even though is not rich or buoyant enough to maybe put in place light and internet, of course, the fact of their exposure creates something in them, readiness. What readiness does is that it opens your eyes to available opportunities. For example, I'm going to give you a sample test. Every morning you go out from your house, you don't know the kind of cars that pass through your house. But the day you start picking interest in one particular kind of car, that's the day you start seeing that car in front of your house. This car passed through my house 7 times today. Why? Because interest creates opportunity. You realize that people who have interest in such things always have that advantage of the opportunity of opening up into something like that. You know, when little opportunity opens, they see the advantage and they take advantage of it. But somebody who is not exposed will not even think of it. Even when such opportunity comes, they don't take advantage of it. So you realize on the long run that on the long or the short, 70 to 80% of people who actually have an understanding of this always end up finding a way around getting it done. You mean you don't need to have millions of naira before you can have internet learning in your house. To get light, I mean, people literally generate light, you know, through generators and some other ways. Then to get internet, people literally do that. Now, for remote areas where, you know, maybe there's no light generally, or maybe the internet there is bad, obviously, because of your interest, the first thing that comes to your mind is to move out of that location. That's why I talk about adaptation. Someone who is not exposed will not think of a reason why he should move out. But somebody who is exposed already counts it as a negative factor to him because of what his interest suits. So you realize on the long run, it is more visible for somebody or a group of people rather than on a massive scale. So that comes back to the implementation. Now, your second question, which I'm about to answer, is that are the government ready? Yes, they look prepared, but on the long run, they are not ready because it comes with a whole lot of factors. You know, I mean, the last time I was here, we were talking about different things that the government needs to implement. All these things have to be in place before we can take it on a massive scale, except if the government breaks it down into bits that, okay, maybe this tenure we want to focus on so state or a particular community. That is becoming realistic. So that is all I can say about the implementation of the whole process.
All right, thank you so much for joining us on this episode once.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Alright, to our audience, thank you as well for joining us on Daybreak Africa, coming to you from our studio here in Ondo City. And this is what we'll be handing you over to our Lagos studios. So stay tuned while I sign out. I am Angela Daku.
I'll always say, remain blessed and productive. I remain Micheal Obagiri.